Let me paint you a picture. It's your birthday. Someone finds out, maybe a coworker, maybe a friend, and they say, "Oh my gosh, it's your birthday. What are you doing to celebrate?" And you just shrug. Nothing, really. It's just another day. And they look at you like you've just said something deeply, profoundly wrong, like you told them you don't believe in soup. But here's what's interesting. That reaction, that shrug, that quiet indifference to your own birthday isn't random. It isn't just you being humble or low maintenance. There's a whole psychological landscape underneath it. And once you understand what's actually going on, it changes the way you see yourself completely. So today, let's talk about the psychology of people who treat their birthday like a normal day, because this is way more fascinating than it sounds. First, let's get something out of the way. There's a common assumption that people who don't celebrate their birthday are either depressed, secretly bitter, or doing that thing where they say they don't care, but they actually care enormously and they're just waiting to be surprised. And sure, sometimes that's true, but a lot of the time, none of those things are happening. These people genuinely, authentically feel fine. The day passes, they eat whatever they were already planning to eat, and life continues. So what's actually going on? One of the most well-supported explanations comes from attachment theory, originally developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by researchers like Mary Ainsworth. People with what's called a more avoidant attachment style tend to have learned, usually in early life, that expressing emotional needs, especially the need for attention, celebration, or to be made to feel special, doesn't always go well. Maybe the attention didn't come. Maybe it came with strings attached. Maybe celebrations in their household were inconsistent or subdued. Over time, the brain does what it always does. It adapts. It starts to regulate expectations downward. And birthdays, which are essentially society's annual permission slip to need things from people, quietly lose their pull. This isn't damage. This is intelligence. The nervous system learned a rule. Don't build up to the day. Don't expect the parade, just be normal and you won't be disappointed. And honestly, that rule works. It's just that most people don't realize they're still running it 20 or 30 years later. Then there's another layer, and this one is particularly interesting. Some researchers in the field of self-concept and identity have found that people who are strongly internally referenced, meaning they derive their sense of self from within, not from external validation, tend to be less responsive to external markers of significance. And birthdays are, at their core, an external marker. Someone else decided this day matters. The calendar says so. Society says so. But if your psychological center of gravity is internal, you already feel like yourself every day. You don't need the day to feel different in order to feel significant. Think of it this way. Imagine two people walking through a city. One of them needs the city to be lit up, decorated, full of music and color to feel alive and present. The other one feels all of that from inside, from a kind of internal hum that doesn't depend on the environment. Neither one is better, but they experience celebration very differently. People who treat their birthday like a normal day are often this second type. The inner world is already running. They don't need the external event to switch something on. There's also something worth exploring around what psychologists call temporal landmarks. A researcher named Heng-Chen Dai, along with colleagues at the Wharton School, found that people are more likely to pursue goals and reset behaviors around fresh start moments, New Year's, birthdays, the first of a month. These moments feel psychologically distinct from regular time. But here's the thing, not everyone experiences time that way. Some people have what you might call a more continuous relationship with time, where one day genuinely does flow into the next without hard stops or punctuation marks. For them, a birthday isn't a reset button. It's just Tuesday. And that's not a flaw in perception. It's a different but entirely coherent way of being in time. Now, there's a social dimension here too that we'd be wrong to ignore. In many cultures, especially Western ones, birthdays have been gradually inflated into major production. The birthday industrial complex, the cakes, the themes, the Instagram countdowns, the birthday month declarations, has raised the stakes considerably in the last few decades. And for some people, especially those who are sensitive to pressure, performative joy, or being the center of attention, this inflation has made birthdays feel less appealing, not more. It's not that they don't want to feel loved, it's that they find something uncomfortable about the mandatory, scheduled nature of it. Real connection, for them, doesn't need a calendar date and a balloon arch. This connects to something in introversion research, much of which builds on the work of Hans Eysenck and later Brian Little. Introverts, and again, this isn't a flaw, just a neurological wiring, tend to find social attention and stimulation more quickly draining than extroverts do. Being the focal point of a room, even a small one, even a loving one, costs something. And so the birthday, which is essentially an event where you are the main character by default, can feel more like work than celebration. But here's where it gets really layered. For many people who quietly sidestep their own birthdays, there's also something almost philosophical at work. A kind of resistance to the idea that significance needs to be performed, that love needs to be demonstrated through production. There's a certain type of person who looks at a grand birthday gesture and thinks, I'd rather have a quiet conversation over coffee. Not because they're broken, but because they've developed a very clear internal compass for what feels real versus what feels like theater. And here's the reframe I want to leave you with, because I think it matters. The birthday is just a day people aren't missing out on meaning. They've often distributed it differently. They find significance in ordinary moments, a random Tuesday dinner that goes long, an unexpected phone call, a moment in the middle of nowhere that inexplicably feels significant. They don't save up joy for designated occasions. They let it leak into everything, unevenly, quietly, constantly. So if this is you, if you've ever given someone a puzzled shrug on your birthday, if you've ever felt vaguely alien watching people treat a date on a calendar like a minor religious holiday, I want you to know your psychology is telling you something real. It might be saying you're internally anchored. It might be saying you've learned to protect your expectations wisely. It might be saying you need a different kind of intimacy than the kind that comes with candles and a crowd. None of that is something to fix. And maybe the most interesting question isn't why some people don't celebrate their birthday. It's what it reveals about how they meet the world every other day of the year. If this resonated with you, I'd genuinely love to know. Drop it in the comments. Do you treat your birthday like a normal day? And do you know why? Because sometimes the most revealing thing isn't how we celebrate, it's what we quietly decide we don't need.